Welcome everybody, and thank you for coming again. I have the privilege of introducing our first speaker. Professor Len Ortenzi is a retired professor from the Finger Lakes Community College. If you've never heard Lenny talk or seen him, he's a very cool guy. In his past, he's taught physics, majoring in math and a little biology, but he's got some very interesting things he's going to bring forward tonight, and I know him personally. He's a wonderful person, but he's passionate for truth, communicating truth, and getting behind certain things that you may think something of that are not true. He wants to tell you the truth. So, Lenny, come on up, and let's welcome you as you come in.
Considering I'm a scientist, I'm going to give you a little bit more from a scientific perspective. I'm an educator, and I love teaching people, so I'd like to give you just a couple things to think about this concept of naturalism, this concept of creationism, and see which one follows the evidence, which one makes more sense based on what we observe, because that's what science is all about. Okay? So, hey man, I'm a physics professor. I got to give you a quiz. Did you guys know you were going to get a quiz today? So, is it naturally made or is it designed? I'm going to show you a picture and you yell out. Just by the way, a little disclaimer, most 5-year-olds get most of these right and college students fail miserably. Because, I don't know, it's something about hearing one kind of worldview since you were 5 years old in kindergarten and embedded in you forever. It's kind of a scary thought when people, in my estimation, it's totally my prejudice, I think you've lost perspective when you say things are naturally made when it's kind of obvious to me they're designed. All right, so here we go. How about that? I'm not even sure what that is, right? Okay, naturally made or designed?
Natural.
Natural? She yelled that out.
Why not?
I like it. Natural. Okay. Well, actually, I like it. Natural because, yeah, that was part of the, that's Elizabeth, how do you say it? Elizabeth. So that's Corporal Elizabeth at the pier in Charlotte Pier, and that was just all wind-blown ice coming off of the water. It was really kind of cool. How about, that's a piece of wood that I thought looked a whole lot like E.T. It sure shows up much better on this computer, but I don't know if you can see he's E.T. phone home. Do you see it?
Yes.
Natural or man-made? Natural or design?
Natural.
Hey, yell these out, man. It's like in my physics class. Just yell these things out.
Natural.
So, natural. I would agree with you. So how about, I love that. That's cactus. I stole from the internet. You like that? It's probably natural. Yeah, it's just those insects ate that thing out. I like this one. This is a piece of driftwood. This might be a little tougher. What do you think?
Design.
Actually, it was really just a piece of driftwood. Now, how would you know when you saw a piece of a bird, whether it was designed or natural? Look and see what eroded and what didn't. There's a key, like an arrowhead. The parts that broke away aren't the softer rock, it's harder rock. That shouldn't have eroded away before the other rock did. Why did it make that shape? It could have made it by random chance and natural processes, but then wouldn't the soft rock erode first like in Niagara Falls? Right? So that bird is actually naturally made because you can see which way is the soft rock going in there. This is another piece of driftwood that I thought would look like a lot like a topographical map, and you can see that the soft wood was eroding away and the hardwood staying. It gives you kind of like a little haunting feeling of earth science in 8th grade where you had to do these things. All right? Groot. Alright, so that showed up on the news. I stole that capture on there, alright? How about an elephant? Come on, you guys have the same thing as I have. Elephants? What do you think?
Natural.
Yeah, naturally made. Because you kind of see that it resembles to us an elephant, but we would be inferring design if we thought a bunch of somebody manipulated the water molecules to do that. Here's one that I thought was interesting. This was a picture that I took in Luray Caverns in Virginia. Remember this, Elizabeth? Mm-hmm. Fried eggs. You like it? All right. Natural or design?
Both. Natural. Both.
I don't know about both. It's just the dripping of of the mineral-rich water that created something that my brain says, oh, that looks like a fried egg. So they named it fried eggs, right? There's us in the Luray Cavern. So all the structure in there was all just natural processes of water and time. All right? Ooh, this is driftwood, right? Driftwood's probably natural, but now what is it? See how
Design.
interesting that is? Because now, even though we use driftwood, which was all natural processes, some mind was involved to make it look like a horse, because that ain't going to happen on the beach. You just kind of know this, right? How about Mount Rushmore? That's just a bunch of rock. All right? But you kind of know in your heart the answer to this, right? It's design. You know? But it's just rock. I've never met the designer, and I don't know how he did it, and I really wasn't paying attention during the tour, but you know what? I don't need to know any of that, but look at that picture, and it sure looks designed to me. I mean, I put my motorcycle around the other side, and even the back looked designed. It's just me, right? Okay. So, I love this one. This went viral a couple years ago, right? And they swear that it wasn't Photoshop. And why do I, as a physicist, completely doubt that claim that it wasn't Photoshop? It's just too good, isn't it? I've seen him with the honey pot with that exact same pose, you know? So it's a real interesting thing. You know, sometimes you're not quite sure, but it seems like there's a little too much information, a little too much detail in that one for me to go with naturally made. How about that one? That might be a little easier. Piece of metal, you find it on the ground, all right? You get off the little chair or the ladder on Mars, you're the first one on Mars, you look down and there's that. Why are you sad? Because you know that metal doesn't get that round, and etchings don't show up, and ironically, in God We Trust don't show up on a piece of random metal. It just doesn't happen, and that's Lincoln. And how do I know that's Lincoln? I never met the guy, but that's Lincoln. That's an etching that looks like our 16th president, okay? All right, how about this one? If you were here last week, you learned all about CRISPR, and you learned about what Dr. Miano does for a living, which is pretty much decipher DNA. It's like, oh, let's break that line of code. What happened? Well, these rats grew hearts with cardiac muscle with the membrane all not working right? Okay, that line of code has something to do with cardiac muscle membrane. And then, okay, let's get to the next line. Hey, only 3 billion more to go, you know? And he's deciphering DNA. What I find fascinating is if he's deciphering DNA, that means DNA was a cipher. And if DNA was a cipher, cipher's got another language, another word for cipher is language. So language only happens when there's a sender and a receiver that agree upon it. Language just doesn't happen by natural processes. And yet here's DNA multiplying, splitting in half, and this staircase unravels, and then these little micro machines come by and put the right other letter on there so that you got a clone of the original. And we even discussed, and we're going to discuss next week with Dr. Sanford, how sometimes that just doesn't spell right. Sometimes there's 3 or 4 spelling errors that every time this thing gets divided. But it started off as this amazing 3.1 gigabyte, 6-foot long information software program that puts to shame anything a human mind could do. So what kind of person do I think, if I'm having a discussion with somebody over a beer and they say, yeah, I think DNA would happen by natural processes. And I'm like, a rock like Mount Rushmore, you know was designed, but the most sophisticated operating system known to man, that was natural? Huh? How much beer have you had? You know, I mean, there's something about that just doesn't seem good science. And if you have that worldview, you might be struggling with this quiz because you want so bad to say that thing was natural. It's not natural. The machinery going in there to have the DNA unravel and have one piece and having the other one just kind of writing it and rewriting it and putting it all together, that's just, oh, you wish humans could come up with machinery like that. My son's a biomedical engineer. He spends the whole day stealing ideas from nature, putting a patent on it, and going, look at us, we're smart. They're stealing ideas from nature? Like that was natural? They're stealing an idea from a better engineer. That's all I can think of. Okay? So, has the religion of naturalism blinded you? That's what the talk's all about, and how it ruins good science in my estimation. Okay? So my name is Len Ortenzi, and like Tom said, I taught physics for thousands of years, and what we're going to do is just go through a brief introduction, tell you about science, why I love it, and talk to you about worldviews and what questions a naturalist must not ask, and how it limits science when they're not allowed to ask questions. Okay? So I was, born a short-balled Italian guy. I experimented with hair later in life, and now I'm back to being a short-balled Italian guy. Let me move the podium down a little bit more. That's good. All right, so, but I got to tell you, I love science. I just thought that was the coolest thing. So I was those nerds. You know, my name's Leonard. I mean, there's a nerd writing the name, you know. And Elizabeth, you got to change your name to Penny, otherwise it won't make any sense. All right. So I won every science fair on the planet. I was a finalist for NASA astronaut, and now I go do science shows all over the place, do talks for college and science shows for little kids and people in old folks' homes. So I'm having a real good, fun time in my retirement. I love science. I just love science. Because science means to know, and ever since I was 4, I kept asking questions that drove my parents crazy. And it means to know. I love science. And it's based on all observations and study. And so it's just a wonderful thing. So if you ever thought Christians can't be scientists, man, apparently never heard of these dudes named Newton and Galileo and Kepler and Calvin and Bacon. Wow. All right? So the history of the scientific method, I won't go through all this, but just the point being, Galileo pretty much put it all in a nice, orderly fashion. You know, you do observations, hypothesis, mathematical deduction, and you test, and then you retest, and then you go back. It's a good thing. All named, and these are all smart dudes, but Galileo and these boys were heavy-duty Christian, and it didn't stop them from actually inventing the scientific method. Here's an insult I found online. I don't know if you can read it from where you are, but it says, pretty much the scientific method on this side. You start with an idea, you perform experiments, does the evidence support it, go back, blah, blah, blah. Use the theory to better understand the universe. And then you go through a little flow chart. And then the insult on faith is you start, you get an idea, you ignore contradicting evidence, you keep your idea forever in the end. And then that's the stereotype they have for Christians, right? And I found in my life that, ironically, most science and a lot of the science that people I know are being done by Christians, because their worldview is making them strive for what the big guy was thinking. And how did he do that? You know, and what do you think he designed that for? And then I found other people that have a naturalistic worldview that said Darwin of the gaps. It's just evolution. You don't know what the appendix is for? Evolution. It's just a residual vestigial organ. And so it's weird which ones are religious and which ones are doing real science. Interesting. Okay? So, just a quick thing. A fact is something that's real, something known to be true, and an assumption, scary, something taken for granted, and it's believed to be true. So, what's the difference between an assumption and a fact? Well, how weird is it that if you have an assumption, you'll stop testing because it's a fact. So you know what assumptions do to you and me, right? Okay? And it's a dangerous thing to go through that. And scientists shouldn't hold on to those assumptions for long. Okay? Good examples of that is it took 2,000 years for us to at least admit what some people in Greece already knew, that the Earth is not in the center. But this old way of thinking actually explained what they saw. It doesn't necessarily mean it was true, but it did explain what they were seeing, so they kept at it. And they just kept adding to it, and they had these epicycles to explain why there was retrograde motion of Mars. All this stuff they were coming up with to keep their theory intact. They wouldn't let go, they wouldn't let go. You know, and Galileo got in trouble for agreeing with Copernicus, and the urban legends are run amok that has something to do with religion versus faith, which isn't. Galileo and Copernicus were both faithful Christian guys that embraced the sun in the center of the universe. Well, the universe at the time, but at least at the center. Here's another one, Aristotle. He got stuff wrong all the time. You should read some of the stuff he said. And 2,000 years, nobody questioned it. It was an assumption of truth. Heavy objects fall faster than light objects. All right, so let's see if I got something I can drop. Like, heavy objects fall faster than light objects. Oh, dang, maybe it's true. Oh, but wait, it was Galileo who had the nerve to climb the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Christian again, did I mention that? And he figured out that, it really doesn't have anything to do with the heavy or the light. It has to do with air resistance screwing up what's true. What's true is everything falls at the same rate. And that's something that Galileo had to fight the paradigm that was embedded in people's mind. These are my notes. All right, so a lot of times I've noticed that it really doesn't have anything to do with the evidence at all. It has to do with your worldview before you saw the evidence. Let's say you were a Christian, right? And you had a worldview that was based on some biblical things. And Genesis was actual history. And you're going to see a fossil, and you're going to say, great evidence for creation. And then the same fossil, seen by an evolutionist, is going to say, great evidence for evolution. It's the same evidence. It's just a different operating system. So a lot of times scientists blur that line between the facts and their interpretation. And the more doctorate degrees they have, the more cocky they get that their interpretation is part of the facts. You gotta be careful. Gotta be careful. You gotta have your little detectors on whether or not they're saying their opinion or they're saying what truly is observation. And then their interpretation should have a little star next to it saying, I'm just interpreting this. Okay? Here we go. Oh, a Big Bang made this world from nothing. That's not science. That's a worldview. That's a philosophy. That's based on our observations. This is your conclusion based on a worldview you had even before you observed it. Okay? Where if you're a humanist, that's what you got. Naturalism. All things were made by just natural processes. And therefore, the universe made itself. You see the problem? You see the issue going on here? Where somebody else with a different worldview might go, wow, incredible design. This universe must be a really big God that can hold the universe in the palm of his hand. I mean, like, this is amazing. You know how many stars there are? That was an afterthought on day 4. You know, I mean, somebody from a different worldview would be just overwhelmed with awe. It doesn't stop them from doing science. Don't confuse who you give credit to for all the great science you do after you try to figure out how she did it. You know? It sure makes a lot more sense than saying nobody did it, it made itself. It's like good naturalists. Remember how it philosophically fell apart? It's kind of why. Okay? So a creation worldview is God is everything and we're just things. So there's an actual evolutionist saying the law of Christ is incompatible with the law of evolution. You can't have both. You know, they're at war with one another. Okay? So the word evolution, I use that word, naturalism. You know, I just want you to know that evolution has some many meanings, but only one is scientific. Like cosmic evolution. Nobody's been there, we don't see it. So there's a whole bunch of people talking about their interpretation of what they see. But if they have a naturalistic worldview, this is how they're going to interpret it. If they have a Christian worldview, they're going to interpret it differently. Who's right? Well, from a scientific point of view, I'm going to tell you, I don't know who's right. Because neither of them can be tested. It's not science. Are you with me? So all these astronomy books, you got to be careful. Most of them are 89 to 90% interpretation based on a worldview. Okay? There's also chemical evolution, the origin of higher elements from hydrogen. That can't be explained. We've never seen a star develop, even though they'll tell you they think they have. Stellar and planetary evolution, the origin of stars, planets, no one's ever seen it form. Organic evolution, the origin of life, or macroevolution, changing from one kind of animal to another. From the goo to you via the zoo. From an amoeba to a man. What makes the mouse a man? Millions of years. I mean, like, it's how that is presented to you since you were 5 that makes you think that's comfortable for you now. If you're looking at me now, but it's common sense that we evolve. Common means what you're used to, and sense is what you've observed. Well, if you observed teachers since you were 5 saying that this was true, I don't know if you've been taught. You might have been indoctrinated. You gotta be careful. have you been presented other options so that you can weigh the evidence, so you can look at the observations and go, which model supports the observations? That's the model, as a scientist, you should follow. Okay? So I wonder about that. Tom, how much time are you? Okay. 10? 8 to 10. Okay, thank you. All right. I'm not going to get through nearly all this, but I just want to show you a couple of things. Microevolution, I hate that word, just like Dr. Meow hates that word. It's variations within a kind of animal. This is what's been observed, and this one is the one that we would think of as fact. Natural selection happens, mutations happen, so don't let anybody bait and switch you and get you convinced that natural selection and mutations are true. Therefore, we came from an amoeba. Don't do that. Don't do what they do with the religious junk. Okay? One's testable, one's true, but as you're going to find out if you show up next week, you might find out that the whole truck is going the wrong way. And we're finding ourselves not evolving, but more like devolving. More next week. All right? So those things are not science. You can't tell me they're science because you want them to be science. They're not observable, they're not testable, you can't repeat them. Those things are just a whole bunch of things in my astronomy book that somebody thought of based on their worldview. If I wrote an astronomy book with a different worldview, boy, it'd be really a weird, different book. Okay? Alright, so let me just hit one before I go. First law of thermodynamics. Matter can't be created or destroyed. Did you get that? Alright? So that's the first law. Okay? Matter and or energy, because you remember that mass is a form of energy. Okay? Energy can't be destroyed. It's changed from one form to another form. Okay? So that means, as weird as it may seem, I gotta come up with this thing. That's two choices. Either somebody outside of space and time made the universe, or the universe made itself. Are you with me? It's really the only thing you got. If you have a naturalistic worldview, you are forced to steer your brain into this rabbit hole in wonderland of saying nothing made itself. Why? Because you can't ask those questions about what else could have formed the universe if you only have a naturalistic worldview. See how limiting scientifically that is, in spite of it also being philosophically self-defeating. Okay? So, there's a third thing, but you'd have to be in Woodstock in order to have that one. So, alright, so, one way you could say is in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. In Genesis 1:1. A profound statement that particle accelerators of this century kind of went, wow, in one sentence they mentioned matter and space and kind of, in the beginning. I mean, there's the time had a beginning. Nobody knew time had a beginning. Everything was thought to be eternal. Now, a humanist would regard the universe as self-existing and not created. That's their manifesto. That's what they believe. So this thing about the Big Bang, there was a beginning according to the evidence. I kind of believe that. Because from all the evidence, there was a moment in time where there was a beginning of all matter, energy, space, and time. It's amazing. Okay? As a matter of fact, the word universe comes from the word uni, which means single, and a spoken word, spoken sentence, universe. So we use the word universe, we're actually saying a spoken verse. And what verse would that be? Well, as a physicist, I know what verse that was. In order to create a physical universe, something has to happen first. If you were something that lived outside of space and time, if you were a deity that had no beginning or end because you are eternal, and therefore don't need to be created, so don't even bother asking me that later, who created God? Alright? In all religions, you got them. When you go up to somebody from another worldview and say, what another religion, who created God? You stump them. Because they believe God is part of the universe. Well, who created the universe? You got the same problem about the universe creating itself. But in a Christian, Judeo-Christian worldview, you don't stump us. Because if you think about it, you've actually proved us. The only way you can cause a physical universe to come into being is from an outside agent, something that's beyond space and beyond our time, beyond our dimensions. There must be something beyond or above that. I'm going to use a bad word. And it's not a natural explanation. It's above that. You know what word means above in Greek? Super. natural. Ooh, bad word. But that's things that are above what you would consider the physical universe. And that means I believe that there are things that are above the physical universe. So, universe. Isn't that beautiful? So what was the verse? From a physics point of view, I know what the words have to be. There's an actual t-shirt I had, and God said, and then it was all Maxwell's equations of electromagnetic radiation. And then at the bottom it said, and then there was light. So God said, let there be light. That's what the verse was. If somebody says, how did God create the heavens and the earth? He said, let there be light. The physical universe only exists because there's this weird entity known as light that has characteristics of matter and characteristics of energy all in one. It's a particle, it's a wave, it's a wavicle. We don't even know what it is, but it goes at the same speed no matter where we're looking. It's weird. It doesn't fit in any model we have. But you'd have to say that out loud if you were a deity from outside space and time in order to have this physical universe show up. Okay? And that's important. Okay? Because your textbooks say that 18 to 20 billion years ago, or now it's 13 billion years ago, there was this big explosion called the Big Bang for some unknown reason. Okay? Unknown reason. And it's smaller than the period on this page. And then after billions of years, all the matter and energy once again be packed into a small area. Now, people have dumped this concept because they understood that even if it stretched out and then gravity made it come back together again, it's not going to start over. But you know why they made that up? Do you know why the naturalists made that up? Because if it was an oscillating thing over and over again, they could still claim it's eternal, even though we discovered that the universe had a beginning. A beginner infers a beginner, an outside agent, a first cause. People were so bugged by that, they were coming up with all these different theories to get rid of the first cause because that's religion. You want to hear something ironic? All that work to get rid of religion made you a religion. What a weird irony. That the very act of trying to get rid of religion made you a religion because now you are limiting yourself to a naturalistic explanation. And when you look at an appendix and you think it's been made over millions and millions of years, and you don't know what the appendix is for, you know what you're going to do? It's a vestigial organ left over by mistakes from millions and millions of years of natural processes. We don't need the appendix. The appendix is an amazing organ. Why would an organ be in my body if it didn't have a reason to be in my body? I believe in a designer. He's not going to stick extra organs in my body. How weird to think you have an organ in your body that it's a mistake. How weird. It's like junk DNA. We don't know what it is, and we don't need it. How arrogant this naturalistic worldview can make you. You gotta be careful. If you're falling into that trap, question it. Look at the evidence and see whether or not. Okay, all right. So if you go through the origin of the universe, I just want to point out to you that nothing really means nothing in these textbooks, and that if you go through the Big Bang, at first it was about as big as a few light years across, and then it got smaller and smaller and smaller until it was a trillionth the diameter of a protein. That's where all the matter of the universe came out of, and now it's nothing. It's singularity. So where did everything come from? Well, Alan Guth said nothing, nada, nowhere. He just said it came from nothing. Alan Guth says his theory of expansion helps explain everything. The universe came out of nothing. Okay, now, I don't know if you're picking up on this, but the universe wasn't there and then it somehow went back in time and created itself because it wanted to exist. Or a mind that lives outside of time and space did it. You know? That's the bottom line of the thing. Okay? So, if it evolved from literally nothing, what's the difference between Alan Guth and what I would call a miracle? Both of them are saying ex nihilo. Both of them are saying out of nothing, everything. So what do you like? I got like 25 more. If you invite me back for 12,000 other ones, I'll stop there. But the point I'm trying to make here is to be careful what kind of worldview is forcing you to do science in a weird sort of way. It's making you limit what the answers could be. And I'm finding myself surrounded by people who say, "Ooh, that might be the reason," or "that might be the reason." Follow the evidence. Does the evidence lead toward a naturalistic explanation for DNA? fingerprint of God. I mean, come on, be honest. Shut all your predispositions off, shut your prejudices off, shut your indoctrination off. Because I'm telling you, if you've only heard one side of the story, if you only heard all your life that naturalistic is real science and anything else is religion, then you're not being educated. You're being indoctrinated. You're being indoctrinated in a very insidious religion. And you're being fooled. And it's in violation of your First Amendment rights because the government shouldn't be funding this religion that's convincing all these kids everywhere that they're an accident. And they have no reason and no purpose or whatever. And I've talked enough. So, let me just finish with this. The difference between natural and supernatural might be just the limiting in my thinking. If you're just going to disregard miracles, that would be like disregarding what the tailbone is for. Because you don't know what it's for. Well, I thought it was just left over from when we was an ape. No, you need a coccyx for a reason. Find out why. Find out what an appendix is for. Ask me later. It's awesome. All right? Yeah, you can live without it. You can live without my feet too, but don't go telling me that's good. Right? You'll never get athlete's foot. It's a advantageous mutation. You were born without feet, never get beneficial mutation. Come on. Come on. So, look at it from both worldviews. Be aware of your worldview. If you're a naturalist, that's okay, but would you please admit it? Will you please say, yeah, I'm as religious as you are? That's okay. Then we can go have our beer, talk about our worldviews. But don't you dare look at me, a physicist, or look at Dr. Miano, a microbiologist, or look at Dr. Sanford, who's a geneticist, and say, in your heart, no, you're wrong, because you believe in God. It has to be a naturalistic explanation if you're going to do real science. You're being a bully, and you're not being scientific. So I'm asking you to look at your worldview with a critical mind. And I ask you to follow the evidence where it leads. If a bunch of rocks called Mount Rushmore you immediately knew are designed, then DNA is a slam dunk. All right. Hey, thanks for your attention, and we'll see you soon.